Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the House for agreeing to the suspension of standing orders, and as a consequence I would now move that the Manager of Opposition Business, the member for Watson, be required by this House to immediately apologise to the Speaker for grievously reflecting on her in this place, most particularly yesterday in a motion of referral of the Speaker to the Standing Committee of Privileges and Members' Interest, Madam Speaker. In the member for Watson's defence, Madam Speaker, on the suspension of standing orders, he made the rather extraordinary claim that the previous member for Watson, when it was discovered that he had a fundraiser in his Speaker's dining room, that the then opposition demanded his resignation and that he resigned over that matter. Just to indicate how bad the Manager of Opposition Business's position has become, let me explain some of the facts and the timing of what actually occurred in that decade. Because, as you know, Madam Speaker, you and I were both in the Parliament. The member for Watson might like to check the record because he's now made another false statement to the Parliament. In fact, the former Speaker, Mr Macleay, he resigned as Speaker because he was accused in 1993 of falsely making a claim for $65,000 of benefits from the Commonwealth for falling off a bicycle. That was in 1993. Subsequently, it was found that his claim was within the guidelines, but by that stage he had resigned and was no longer in the Speaker's chair. In the year 2000, 7 years later, this article appeared, and that is when the then government, the Liberal Party was then in government, discovered that in fact the former member for Watson had held a fundraiser in his Speaker's dining room. So it's quite chronologically impossible, Madam Speaker, for the member for Watson's previous claim made only 30 minutes ago to be true. How could the so-called then opposition, which was now in government, have demanded that the member for Watson resign over fundraising in the Speaker's dining room when we didn't know about it 7 years after the former member for Watson had resigned from the Speakership? What this points to, of course, Madam Speaker, is that every day the Manager of Opposition Business comes into this place and seeks to find some fig leaf with which to attack the chair. This has been a pattern from day one. Today it is confusing the years in which Leo Macleay was Speaker and when the revelation was made about him fundraising in the Speaker's dining room. And I've made that very clear to the House. But, Madam Speaker, every single day the member for Watson seeks to denigrate the chair, whether it is calling you a witch on the first day of your election, whether it is moving a dissent motion on the first day of your election, whether it is moving a no-confidence motion within weeks of the Parliament starting to sit in November last year, Madam Speaker. Every day the Manager of Opposition Business tries to distract the House by attacking the chair. Now, it is a fine Australian tradition, Madam Speaker, particularly in this House, that the chair is respected. All of this bullying, all of this dissent, all of this denigration, these no-confidence motions, these insults are usually reserved for the people who are sitting on the floor of the House. Because, Madam Speaker, of course, they can ostensibly defend themselves against those charges or that bullying, those insults. The Speaker's position is raised above the House. And that is why, Madam Speaker, the Speaker should not be attacked and certainly should not be accused of doing something based on a falsehood. Now, the falsehood here, and the reason we're asking the member for Watson to apologise, we're asking him to apologise for reflecting on the chair based on a falsehood. The falsehood being that holding a fundraiser in the Speaker's dining room was unprecedented and improper. Now, the member for Melbourne Ports interjects out of his seat and says, according to you. No, it's not the member for Melbourne Ports, according to me. In fact, the former member for Watson, he was the one in the year 2000, who admitted that he'd held fundraisers, at least one fundraiser, in the Speaker's dining room. So it's not me saying that it was a falsehood. The fact is that the former member for Watson has made it perfectly clear that neither was it unprecedented or improper for fundraisers to be held in the Speaker's dining room. On that basis, the member for Watson should apologise to you, Madam Speaker, in the House, because he made a false claim based on a falsehood, the falsehood being that fundraisers in the Speaker's dining room are unprecedented and improper. They are neither improper nor unprecedented.
No, he hasn't.
The member for Watson has at no time found any rule in any of the standing orders or the House of Representatives' practice that would indicate that holding a fundraiser in the Speaker's dining room was in any way improper, Madam Speaker. So that is why he should apologise. Now, the member for Watson keeps saying, I've apologised 5 times for a technical error. He misses a vital point, and his colleagues should start thinking about whether he is representing them best as manager of opposition business or whether he might be better suited to another role in the parliament, perhaps on the front bench. Because, Madam Speaker, this motion is not about a technical breach by making an inadvertent error. This motion is about demanding, requiring the manager of opposition business to apologise for deliberately trying to cast an aspersion over the Speaker, and that aspersion being found to be based on a falsehood. A proper apology would be for the manager of opposition business to stand up in the chamber and say, I was wrong to base my assertion on the false information that I had been provided. It is not improper for the Speaker to have acted in the way that she did, and it certainly is not unprecedented. And if it suits the House, I apologise to the Speaker. That would be an acceptable apology to the government. And we've given him 2 opportunities to do so. And he has an opportunity to do so now, Madam Speaker. He could do it at the end of my speech. He could stand up and make that apology to the government, to the House, but most importantly to the Speaker. In his defence, Madam Speaker, to the suspension of standing orders, in his defence, and the member for Isaacs loves to shout because he's not very good at argument. He's only really good at bellowing. He's not good at arguing. He's very good at shouting, Madam Speaker. But the problem is I've got the microphone, and I'm not going to stop just because we have a loud member of the audience in the member for Isaacs. In the manager of opposition business's defence, Madam Speaker, he tried to comment on every other subject because he knows how wrong he is. He tried to talk about the Racial Discrimination Act, changes to Section 18C, freedom of speech, South Australian politics, even student politics, Madam Speaker. He did everything other than try and talk about the matter at hand, and the matter at hand is whether he should apologise to the Speaker for denigrating the Speaker's role, for attacking the chair based on a falsehood, Madam Speaker. So I would like to give him the opportunity to do the right thing. This motion will be carried because the government, and I hope the crossbenchers, but certainly the government will support it, and if the crossbenchers have supported it, the government would also be pleased. He should apologise in order to uphold the dignity of the chair. He should apologise in order to uphold the dignity of the chair. Whether he likes the occupant of the chair, whether he dislikes the occupant of the chair, is not the issue that is at hand. It is upholding the dignity of the speakership, which parliaments have done since 1901. It would also show that he is a true gentleman, Madam Speaker. A gentleman, when they've been shown to be wrong about something, should do the right thing and apologise for it. And they are bigger people for doing so. They are limited, quite frankly, Madam Speaker, when they do not apologise. They show themselves to be a bigger man if, when they've been proven to be wrong, they front up and they apologise. But I'm also giving him this opportunity, Madam Speaker, because I believe he should try and repair his relationship with the chair. Since the day you became the Speaker, he has tried to insult and denigrate you in this role. Partisan politics has replaced the dignity of the speakership from the opposition's point of view. And in my view, Madam Speaker, if he does not apologise to you as Speaker today, then his position as manager of opposition business is untenable, and that he can't go on in the role. The Leader of the Opposition, I know the Leader of the Opposition, Madam Speaker, has a very precarious hold on the leadership of the Labor Party, and it's very hard for him to discipline his frontbenchers to stand up to the factions. And I know the member for Watson is a factional warlord from New South Wales and has strong right-wing support, and the New South Wales right-wing has strong support in the Labor caucus. But the Leader of the Opposition needs to show that he has the bottle, that he has the character and the bottle to be the leader of the Labor Party, a real leader of the Labor Party, a leader like Bob Hawke, a leader like Paul Keating. They would, Madam Speaker, they would act against one of their frontbenchers who'd shown such a deleterious hold on the position that they held. In fact, very early in the Hawke government, Mick Young, a Leader of the House, was asked to stand down from the front bench over a matter. He was very close to the Prime Minister, Bob Hawke. He was asked to stand down because he'd proven himself to be wrong about something, and that is the kind of Labor Party that the Labor Party used to be. Not the Labor Party of today, Madam Speaker. But I will give the Leader of the Manager Opposition Business the opportunity to apologise, to take back many of the remarks that he made in the House. He said things yesterday to you, Madam Speaker, in quite an unbridled attack on the Speakership. He said your predecessors, Madam Speaker, whether they be Labor, Liberal or National, have not done this. He said, I have asked you, Madam Speaker, to answer questions about the extent to which the Liberal Party has cashed in on you being in that chair. Cashed in on you being in that chair. Madam Speaker, this one reflects on you. This one reflects personally on your judgment call that you made that previous speakers either had parties that were decent enough to not ask or speakers who had integrity enough to say no. Madam Speaker, I could go on. The government has important business of the day that we want to get on with, and I've made an arrangement with the opposition that the former Leader of the House, the member for Grayndler, will apparently respond on behalf of the Manager of Opposition Business. Now, doesn't that speak volumes, Madam Speaker? Doesn't that speak volumes? Members of the government should take, and the gallery and the press should take careful note, Madam Speaker. The former Leader of the House, the member for Grayndler, is going to defend the current Manager of Opposition Business in the House. And you know why, Madam Speaker? Of course he can speak twice. The other one was a suspension of standing orders, Michael. Keep up. But the point is, Madam Speaker, the member for Grayndler has to defend the current Manager of Opposition Business because he's just better at the job. The former Leader of the House is better at the job. And the member for Watson, by allowing the former Leader of the House to respond on his behalf, is admitting what we all know already, that he's just not up to it. If he was really up to it, Madam Speaker, he'd be standing up on his two hind legs and defending himself in the chamber. And he's not doing that, and I'll tell you why, because his position is indefensible. His position is indefensible. The evidence for that, Madam Speaker, is that the member for Grayndler, who admittedly is probably the opposition's best parliamentary performer, who should be the Manager of Opposition Business in the House, but gave it up to the member for Watson, probably part of a cunning plan hatched when he first lost the leadership to the factional choice over the people's choice, Madam Speaker. But we will listen with interest to the defence of the Manager of Opposition Business, the should-be Manager of Opposition Business, Madam Speaker. I correct myself. We'll listen with interest to his defence of the current Manager of Opposition Business in the House, who really, quite frankly, if he had the bottle, would be prepared to defend himself. But more importantly, if he had the bottle, Madam Speaker, he'd be prepared to apologise. He'd be prepared to apologise and move on.
I call the honourable member for Grayndler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'm very pleased and indeed proud to defend my colleague, the member for Watson and the Manager of Opposition Business. They say, and why am I speaking on this? This is not an attack on the member for Watson. You attack one, you attack all. This is an attack on the Labor Party. This is an attack on the opposition, and this is an attack on the democratic institution of this parliament. If this resolution is carried, then any future government, by a majority vote, can determine that a member of the opposition who, by definition, will lose any vote, can be demanded to come on and take certain action. Now, we were in government for 6 years. That never happened. You were in government for 12 years. That never happened. That shows how desperate you are. What you are confirming today is that you had a plan to get into government, but you certainly do not have a plan to govern. You would rather talk about anything rather than the health cuts, the education cuts, the changes to pensions, the public transport cuts, the attack on economic growth. That is your pathetic budget of broken promises just 2 weeks ago. Now, we were told by the opposition that the adults were going to be back in charge. This is the most childish student politics stunt that I have seen in this parliament since 1996. A desperate government, desperate to defend the Speaker and your right to continue to hold that position. Well, I'll tell you what. In order to have the confidence of the House, you have to be accountable to this House, Madam Speaker. And what the member for Watson did yesterday was raise quite correctly and in order, completely in order with the standing orders, a question to you about how many times your office had been used to raise money for the Liberal Party. You refused to answer that. You refused to be accountable to this parliament, and hence the member for Watson then went to the next step, which is to ask you whether that constituted a breach of privilege by using the Speaker's office to raise partisan money for the Liberal Party on budget night, and who knows how many other nights that have been raised. And we know, Madam Speaker, the extra crockery had to be ordered in the night before budget night into your office. We know that that's the case. But the manager of opposition business raised quite correctly and in accordance with standing orders. Now, under any circumstances, it would have been reasonable to say, I'm directly involved in this, so I'll just refer it off. I won't make a ruling. You chose not to do so. You chose to make a ruling and to say you weren't going to refer it. So then the manager of opposition business moved a motion. Under any previous circumstances, it would have been reasonable, as we did when we were the government, to say, OK, let them have a look at it. And yet that was voted down. Then the manager of opposition business wrote to the Privileges Committee, and they've said we can't even consider whether we'll consider it because of that matter. Absolutely extraordinary. Today, of course, we saw someone finally ejected from the parliament. Interesting that it was the same day that this motion has come, and I'm not clear whether you had advance notice of this motion coming, but I would be surprised if this was a spontaneous outburst from the Leader of the House. The member came in before 1 hour was up, but that was all okay as well, contrary to all the precedent that is there. The substance of the issue, which should be considered, the substance of the issue is over whether it's appropriate for your office to be used for a fundraiser. That's what the manager of opposition business raised. And it says very clearly—
the member will resume his seat.
Come on, I had no—
Madam Speaker, is it appropriate that the member at the dispatch box be disparaging of the clerks of the parliament?
The member will resume his seat. When I ask someone to sit down, I expect them to. Yesterday, you refused to sit down and you went out under 94A because you once again refused to take a direction. Yes, he is indeed. Finally. So, I will give the call back. I will answer first on the point of order to the member for Fisher. Is it appropriate for the member to abuse the clerk? The answer is no, it is not. So the member— but I will give the call back to the member for Grayndler.
Thank you. The substantial issue is that of the speakership and whether it should be used. The House of Reps practice makes it very clear. Impartiality of the chair. That is what it is all about. Now, they raise an issue of whether the member for Watson, who said who said, incorrectly apparently, that the office had never been used, and he's apologised for that. He apologised for that at once, and he also said sorry twice that that was incorrect. But let's be very clear about where that article comes from. It comes from a response about the abuse of the lodge in Kirribilli House to raise money for the Liberal Party. That's where it comes from. That's the context of that article. That's the context of that article. And should any speaker, be they Macleay or Bishop or any of them, use the Speaker's office? No, they should not. That is an appropriate debate for us to have. They then say, well, if you got some of the detail wrong, then therefore there should be an apology for that. But there was false information, Madam Speaker, with respect given from the chair. You said from the chair during this debate that the independent speaker was an agreement between Labor and the Greens. It was not. It was not. Tony Abbott, I've always supported an independent speaker. Press comments. I also wanted to make it very clear that we discussed the issue of a Westminster-style speakership. Over and over again, those opposite and the Leader of the House signed in writing a document. So, Madam Speaker, I don't hold it against you, the fact that you were wrong, but you were. You were. And we don't ask for you to apologise for that. You got the facts there wrong. And what's their remedy of this? The remedy of this is that the manager of opposition business somehow should be demanded by a majority vote to take certain action. Think about the precedent in terms of free speech. This is the day after Sorry Day. I mean, the irony of those opposite, who for 10 years couldn't say sorry to the first Australians, coming in here seeking to move by resolution that the manager of opposition business take certain action. Have a look at all the quotes that they've said. The Leader of the House himself, the Leader of the Opposition Tony Abbott, proposed a Westminster-style independent speaker as early as 2001. They were all up for it, allegedly, during that. They signed an agreement, but they walked away from it, of course. But also, what are they asking for here? The same person, Tony Abbott, the Prime Minister, who said, "We have never been involved in the business of suppressing free speech." This attack on my colleague, the member for Watson, all about how dare he come in here and ask questions on behalf of Australian taxpayers about how much money was raised in the Speaker's office, the one area of this parliament that should be free from party politics, that should be used in the national interest, that should be used for functions involving foreign guests, should be used in a bipartisan way in this place. And yet what you seek to do in doing this is to shut down free speech and debate. Shut down free speech and debate in this parliament. The fact is that during this very debate, Madam Speaker, the problem isn't the member for Watson. The problem is a speaker who interjects from the chair. The problem is a speaker who makes partisan decisions. And I stand by, and we stand by, all of the comments. All of the comments, with the exception of that factual error that he made of the member for Watson about the conduct of this parliament. Because at the end of the day, it's not about you, Madam Speaker. It's not about the member for Watson or me or the Leader of the House. It's about how this parliament functions. And the fact is, if you think this parliament's been functioning well since last September, then I think you're completely out of touch with what the majority of Australians who watch this parliament see each and every day, with this abuse of power continued over and over again by a Leader of the House who's too immature to hold that job.
I call the Leader of the House. 83, noes 57. The question is therefore resolved in the affirmative, and therefore, in accordance with the resolution, I call the member for Watson.
Madam Speaker, you've called me to the dispatch box.
To answer the motion of the House.
Well, Madam Speaker, I already dealt with the terms of the motion during my speech. I have nothing to add. And if the members of the Liberal Party think they can silence a member of the Labor Party, bring it on.
The member has been asked to apologise to the House, to me.
I did.
And he asserts— there'll be silence, I'm on my feet. And he asserts that he has done so. I do not accept that he has. However, the member for Watson has also called me a warrior, and I am. I'm a warrior for the people of Australia, for the Parliament and for this House. And I would simply say that I would hope that this salutary motion will bring about more decorum in this place, where we will indeed work for the benefit of the people of Australia and put aside some of the things that have transpired in recent times, so that the people of Australia can indeed feel more proud of us. And in that case, I think we will move on to the rest of government business. I call the Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, a document is tabled in accordance with the list circulated to honourable members earlier today. Full details of the document will be recorded in the votes and proceedings. And might I say, Madam Speaker, in speaking to this matter, that your statement to the House is extraordinarily gracious, and I hope it will lead to the behaviour that you have outlined in your statement.
Contrary to the lies that are being peddled by the Labor Party around Australia, lies like this one from Senator Cameron, contrary to those lies, the pension will continue to increase and the pension supplement will continue to be paid. That's the reality.
The Minister will resume his seat on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, point of order. It is unparliamentary for the minister to accuse himself of being a liar.
If the member for McMahon abuses the standing orders in that way, again, he will leave the chamber. The minister has the call.
Madam Speaker, the first stage of the grieving process is denial, and hasn't the Labor Party got it in heaps? Denial. Total denial that you engaged in deception and deceit on the Australian people. Deception and deceit on the Australian people, as the Treasurer pointed out, racing towards an accumulated debt of $25,000 for every man, woman and child in Australia. Why don't you get real and face up to the situation that you left this country in? Why don't you face up to it, rather than sitting there with this sort of rabble of denial that we continue to get from the Labor Party? The reality is pensions will continue to rise. In March and September, they've had a point on relevance, Madam Speaker.
The minister has the call.
They've already had their point of order.
What is the point of order?
I'm genuinely loath to interrupt, but he should speak through the chair rather than directing his remarks at yourself.
That is a reasonable point of order, and the
Australia,
minister will
shame on the Labor Party.
I call the honourable member for Denison. The member for Denison will resume his seat for one moment, and I'll give the call to the member for Jagga on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, I understand the ruling you made earlier this week, but I do seek leave to table the transcript of the minister on Monday. He doesn't seem to remember what he said.
The member will resume her seat. The member for Bass on a point of order.
Speaker, a point of order. Is it within the standing orders for the jovial fellow Bill Shorten's advisor in the advisor's box over there to be gesticulating wildly and laughing uproariously and engaging himself in the debate of the House?
There'll be silence. Resume your seat. It is time that we had some decorum here. People are watching, as I said yesterday, in the galleries. They can't hear what the questions being asked are. The member for Denison has an important question to answer, and those people who sit in the advisor's box, I haven't been able to see their pleasant faces this afternoon, but if they are gesticulating and taking place, they shall desist. The member for Denison has the call. The member for McEwen.
On the point of order, when the creepy collection over there shuts up, perhaps the member for Bass and his friend in front of him may not want to be trying to engage advisers that are sitting in the box there. See,
there is no point of order, and it'd be a good idea to withdraw. Shut up, please.
Withdraw. Shut up.
I call the honourable member for Denison.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, the budget maintained funding for Bass Strait freight and passenger